And this year, why is this year different than all the other years?
Because this year, the 15th of Purim's on Friday, which is before Shabbos.
No.
Because the city said, well, it may snow, so we're going to pull it up forward.
Exactly. So, Purim is a really strange holiday. I'll explain. Really, it's one day. And most holidays are one day. Okay, so it gets extended to 2 days because we have the walled cities and non-walled cities. But then there is Tanit Esther, the day before Purim. And the kids have to come to school with their costumes, or at least kindergartens. This is that you don't want them to come on Tanit Esther with their costumes because it's a fast day. It's a little bit more serious than it's not quite a happy day. So what do? So the schools then, so now Purim is extended to a day before Tanit Esther. So now instead of 1 day, it's not 2 days, not 3 days, it's 4 days because once the kids are into the Purim mode of putting on their costumes every day until the actual Purim, they're going to continue to want to put on costumes. And the festive atmosphere becomes 4 days. This year, because the day before Tanit Esther, meaning tomorrow, Tuesday, there's forecasts of snow in Jerusalem. So the municipality of Jerusalem told everybody, all the kindergartens and schools are going to have costume day the day before. That means today. So now there's 5 days of Purim. And Jerusalem is a day ahead of everybody else. Only Jerusalem has the costume days today because only in Jerusalem is there a chance of any snow because Jerusalem's so high up. So the rest of the country is going to be putting on their costumes tomorrow. Gush Etzion's an exception, but every place else, pretty much. So Jerusalem has a day of Purim earlier than everybody else, when originally, Jerusalem has a Purim the day after everybody else. So that's why today my grandchildren were dressed up. And it's really only in Jerusalem do they have that, because of the mayor decided you don't want the kids to lose out on their coming to school in their costumes. And we'll see. Anyways.
And it may not even snow.
Yeah. Probably not. Who knows? Tov, let's get back to our topic at hand. We are learning how to kasher a kitchen. Yesterday we covered the counters and the sinks, or didn't cover them. We kashered them, right? Some people cover them and they kasher them. But we covered the topic in any case. Okay? Next item at hand. While we're at the sink and the counters, you should, if possible, kasher the tap as well. The faucet. It definitely absorbs hot, if not splashes, sometimes steam. You take a boiling pot of pasta and you strain it in the sink, so that steam is coming up into the faucet. So how do you kasher it? The same way it receives the taste. You can steam it out. You could use a kumkum to pour boiling hot water. That's just as good as steam. Or if you have a steamer, that's exactly the same. But you don't have to have a steamer. So they say that's a good thing to do, is to kasher your faucet as well in the sink.
So would I be correct in thinking that you should boil some water on the stove so the steam will...
Now
it's the same bits of the cabinet that it might nominally have hit in the first place?
Yes. Now we're going to talk about the stovetop. Stovetop, it's different types of stoves nowadays. Gas ranges, and then there's, what else is there? Electric ranges. And then nowadays there's a new kind, what's called a convection, I think it's called, where it's very cool. You turn it on, it won't get hot unless there's a metal of a certain type on the spot. And only then, because of the connection. Sorry?
Conduction.
Conduction, that's not convection. Conduction. It's a conduction stove top. They say they're safer because if you don't have any pot on there, you turn it on, leave it on by accident, it'll turn off automatically as soon as you move the pot off from it. You have to have special pots, and so might be. Yeah, and not everybody likes it, but you did, So you have to switch your pots and get new pots that work in such a system. Conduction, right? There has to be the conduction.
Induction. No, conduction is
No.
intentional.
You might be right. Induction.
It's induction. Conduction.
Is it? Is it? I'm sorry.
The thing that to cook in and
It's what they're describing. You directly heat, you're using the magnetic force to directly heat the metal of the pot.
In any case, the stovetop. How do you kosher that? So we already spoke about a few times about those grates that hold up the pot. What about the surface itself? So as we said, nobody puts food on the surface, but things do fall, there are spills, and I told you earlier that essentially the top of the range, the gas range, that surface is treif, because you've got spills of meat, hot meat going onto it, and you.
If you use it for both, you have two stoves, and it's not treif.
True. Most houses
In the case.
have only one range. You're right. You could have a separate range for milchik, separate range for fleshik, but
For that matter, you're better off having a separate home for Pesach.
some people do. Some people have a Pesach kitchen. Have you ever heard of this? Some homes, they build them ahead of time, and they have in their basement. Many times it is. They make a whole other kitchen. They don't use it all year round, and they only use it for cooking on Pesach. And
in my neighborhood.
you don't have to kasher the kitchen for Pesach. You don't have to do this whole class. You don't have to kasher anything. You just close it all up. Don't use that kitchen, and then move downstairs. And maybe inconvenient, but it's only a week. So, as I said, I think in 2-3 hours you can kasher a kitchen. So, that's what we're learning about.
In my neighborhood,
People do that, though. Yes.
I think it's a custom that everybody has a separate kitchen, which are open only on Pesach.
Yeah.
Yeah,
What neighborhood is that?
In Ashkelon.
In Ashkelon?
Mostly
Really?
Yemenite, mostly Yemenite.
Really?
They have a separate kitchen. Well, one time I said, "Is that a Machon?" I said, "Yeah, it's Machon also kitchen." I said, "Really? For what?" It's for Pesach. Then
Oh, yeah.
when I spent
Amazing.
last Pesach, then I see that they didn't use the regular kitchen. They put it's like it's there, but they don't use it. And
Amazing.
They open the one at the back,
Right?
which is specified only for
Yeah. It's definitely possible. But as I said, I think most people in the world, they kasher their kitchens. And of course, sometimes you need to kasher a kitchen when you move into a rental. Before that, people didn't keep kosher. You don't know if they kept kosher. So sometimes you do have to. Maybe you yourself at some point in your life didn't keep kosher. Now you're kashering your kitchen or your family home, etc. So that's why we're learning laws of how to kasher a kitchen. We're moving on to the stovetop. So the stovetop, as I said, it absorbs taste from spills. So how do you get rid of it? Same way that you, pretty much the same as the counters. You can either, shalom. Psh, welcome Shlomo. Shlomo, welcome back. You used to be a little small box in the computer. Now you're so big. Good to see you. Shalom, Shlomo. Student, you came to the Machon maybe how many years ago the first time?
1981.
81. Whoa. Do the math, guys. Over 40 years ago. I wasn't here at the time, but the Machon existed, and happy to have you back. Welcome.
I have found out just now, so I was right here.
Oh, well, are you still, are you going to remember anything that we say? Because, they give you some kind of sedative.
I
No.
didn't even know I would do it.
Wow. Amazing. Okay, good. Sometimes they...
After 2 minutes, I was out.
Right.
I thought that I was back in the day that I was. Like,
Right, no, but when you wake up, sometimes you think you've woken up, and really afterwards, you won't remember the first few hours. So I usually tell them, give me a little extra. Anyways, good to see you. Good to see you. We're learning about kashrut, how to kasher a kitchen. We're up to how to kasher the stovetop. So the stovetop, of course, the way it received taste was spills. So you can spill on it, pour boiling hot water on it from a boiling hot kumkum, as we said before, with the counters and the sinks, it's the same. Or you can also cover it, as the covering is going to stay on, and you're sure it's going to stay on. You don't really have to kasher it. As I said, people don't usually put food on it at all. It's just for the question of spills. You don't want it to be exposed as it's not kosher. And
Steam it?
that's also possible. Yeah, steaming, if you have a good steamer that, actually keeps it hot. One more thing. I'll just finish, and then I'll take all your questions and all your comments. There's one more part of the stovetop that if you have a gas range, you have actually the burners themselves. So the burners themselves, they're continually kashering themselves because they're being burned out. It's libun, right? It's not libun chamor, but there's definitely room to be lenient here and just, make sure they're clean and put them back in place and turn them on before Pesach starts, and they'll be burning themselves out together with the grates. What if they're metal? What if they're electric? An electric element, like it's more common in America, I think, than gas range. I think is electric ranges, and
They sure get to hamor.
sorry.
The elements certainly get to hamor.
Absolutely, the elements may become a libun chamor. You just turn them on for a little bit, and as long as they get to the highest height, the highest temperature, they're kosher. This induction ovens, you pour the boiling hot water, and when you have to have a pot on there for it to work. So you keep it on for a few minutes till it gets to the hottest it can be, and then you pour the hot water on the sides, on the so to cover the splashing, and pretty much you're good to go. There is also, it's called ceramic. Ceramic. It's not quite induction, but the surface of it looks like it's a solid plate of glass. And underneath it, it's actually, it's not glass, it's actually ceramic. Looks like glass, but it's ceramic. And you put the pots directly on it, but again, the same idea. The only way it receives taste is by spilling on it. Nobody actually cooks a hot food directly on it. So you just pour the boiling hot water and you're good to go. Now I'll take questions and comments. Yes, David?
Two questions. First one is does altitude matter? You were so specific before how you keep your kumkum plugged in so it doesn't cool off even a little.
Yes?
So I moved from New York to Denver. Temperature of boiling water drops by 20 degrees or whatever.
Doesn't matter. As long as it's boiling hot water, it's kosher. Yes, another question.
Is it an issue if people sometimes cook on the burners? Because I've seen people take a pita, they take a tortilla, they want to heat it up. They toss it directly on the grill.
Absolutely.
And now
that's a big problem.
Or do we go
that type of grill needs libun chamor. That type for that reason we talked about these grates. And if you actually do that, if they're absorbing chametz taste without any liquid, they need libun chamor. It's a question whether libun kal is good enough for them. That's why I suggested covering them, and you're safe to go. But it's not the majority of use. Right. So there's room to be lenient and say that you could put them in the oven, as I said. If you put them on a diagonal, they fit, and as long as there's no plastic elements and so forth. But that's a good point. Some people do cook directly on the grates without any pot. If they're grilling up an eggplant or something like that, sometimes people use some tongs or put some food directly on those grates. So you might need libun chamor, and I think it's the minority of use, of course, according to most opinions. So you can rely on that. Another question. There was David. Ruven, you wanted to say something. Did you forget already?
You answered my question actually. So bonus points.
Ariel.
Do chemical cleaning products have an effect on kosher?
No.
No. Okay.
We mentioned any kind of soap that makes it inedible can be useful if something has not been dormant for 24 hours since its use. Right? We suggested that you add into the waters of the Hagalah a little bit of soap, just in case one of the vessels releases some potent taste, because it's within 24 hours. So you have the soap, and then it becomes inedible, and the taste is meaningless.
Like, for example, the oven top, like, not the gas ones, but the electric ones.
Yeah.
Just like a plate.
Yeah?
Okay.
You should not use it for 24 hours beforehand.
Right. Okay.
And then, after 24 hours have passed, you pour on it boiling hot water from a boiling hot kettle. That's what we say. Okay? Good. There are seats, there are chairs. You're welcome. Should we move on? The next topic we're going to discuss is pots and silverware. We discussed this before, that you take the largest pot that you have. It was unclear. Somebody asked me before, do I have to set aside a pot for kashering? No, just use the largest pot that you have, and then everything else can go inside of it once it's brought to a boil. And you have to make sure that it continues to stay at a boil as you put in one vessel after the other. You can put a few at a time, as long as it remains bubbling. It has to bubble for at least a few seconds while the pot is immersed. It doesn't have to be immersed totally at once. It could be a part of it, and then the other part of it, and then the other part of it. And usually you put your silverware in there too, just in case you use your silverware with kli rishon, although most silverware is used for eating, which is usually not that hot, but that's the standard. And then there's one problem. There's one problem with that system. You could do, and of course you could take your pots and your cutlery to the local communal stand where they do it for you. Sometimes they ask you to pay a few shekels to offset the cost. So you don't have to do it at all. But you can do it at home. The only problem is what you're left with is the cover of the largest pot. The largest pot itself, you can kasher. As we said, you bring it to boil, and then you cause it to overflow in a method which it remains bubbling hot. We suggested using a kumkum, boiling hot water from a kumkum to add to the boiling water in the pot. And Rabbi Menachem suggested actually immersing a smaller pot, has a handle, let's say, and you boil up hot water in that pot, and then that boiling pot with the hot water in it causes the water displacement, and that goes over the rim. But what about the lid?
Why not just cover it, let it boil it up, and then turn it over and.
I'll tell you why. Because you're not going to really get all portions of the lid into the pot. By definition, it's a lid. It won't fit into your pot.
You have top and bottom, and then what you can do is go on like this with the top.
Will the middle of the middle of the lid?
Will go up to boil.
It can only go up to the lid.
Up to the lid, right? Exactly.
So
you give it the lid.
So if you have a pot like this, okay?
Use the lid.
So you cannot use the lid. That's one suggestion. But if you have, okay, so the lid is going to look like the pot. I'm going to draw it in an ellipse. And this is the handle on top of the pot. So you try to fit it in, and you can fit in, but I don't think you can get all the way to the middle, because the size won't allow you to get all the way to the middle. You know what I'm saying?
Okay, but this is the top.
Yeah.
You put it on top, the water is going to come up.
It's only going to come up though this won't fit in more than this. See what I'm saying? This is less than half of.
No. Put it straight down.
On top, you don't have water on top. You only have water. Water can never go beyond the edges.
Yes, it can on a rolling boil. That's why it would splash if you didn't have the lid on. It's going to be splashing upward. It's going to hit the center, like he's saying. Then you turn the lid upside down and do the same thing for the other side. You're good.
And if you want to do the sides, you can go up like this.
First of all, many lids are like this. They're indented, right? Okay, this is something else. Most lids are like that. Most lids are not just a flat thing. And if it's totally flat and you're actually the bubbling is reaching, everything that the flat lid. I hear what you're saying, but most lids are not like that. Most lids are curved, and they're not going to fit in the same size pot. All the smaller lids are going to fit in, but not the. So as the Shua says, just don't use the biggest lid for Pesach. Don't kasher it, put it aside. But if you really need it, there's another solution. What's the solution? I mentioned it in a previous class.
You go outside to your hot tub and you dip it in that.
Hot tub's not hot enough. You can go outside and give it to the communal, where they've got a really big vat. But another suggestion.
You could put one side first and then the other side.
It won't help because you're never going to get to the middle. The middle will never, even if I turn this around, the middle part of the pot will not get boiling water in it.
The same way as you do a sink, essentially.
Not good enough. This receives. We assume that it receives taste from Kli Rishon ala Eish. It has to be immersed in Kli Rishon ala Eish. It's not enough to get spills. Sometimes you'll have actually boiling hot, bubbling soup in it. So what's the solution? I mentioned it the other day.
Well, if it's
I still have it on the board, actually. We said that there's a gradation of methods. So Hagalah, that's what we're discussing now. And I can't do Hagalah. So Libun? So what do you mean? What are you suggesting?
You put it on top of the stove, and you go it all around, and then you turn it over. And
Correct. But I have a better system for you. But absolutely, you're right. The theory is correct. That if Hagalah is not going to work, we can always use the method which is more potent, more able to release taste, and that's using fire directly. So you can either kasher it in a fire directly on the stove, if you have a stovetop that has fire with a gas range. So actually take the lid and put it on top of your fire. Or, better solution is what I mentioned yesterday in class. David, do you have the answer, or you want to ask a
I think
question?
I have an answer. If it's a curved lid,
Yeah?
why can't you turn it up? Do the edges like you said. Because you don't have to do it all at once. So do the edges, and then turn it upside down, and now your curved lid's curving down into the water.
If it works, usually you'll see it's hard. It's hard because usually the water's not bubbling all the way to the surface. It's usually a little bit lower, and technically it just doesn't work, in my experience. So what's the solution? Better than even what Shlomo said, although he's on the right track. How do you do libun with fire? Another way of doing libun. You could use a blowtorch, but also that would ruin your lid probably. Put it in the oven, exactly. We said before, libun kal is more effective than hag'ala. So if you're doing libun kal on your oven, turning it on to the highest, put in the lid, it might get tarnished, it might get that hue, that brownish hue on it, but you'll be able to kasher your biggest lid. All the smaller lids should be fitting in. Or I actually have in my Pesach dishes, my home, I have some of my dishes I do kashering, do hagala. Some of them I have from year to year, I use them only on Pesach. And one of the things I use year to year only on Pesach, a big lid. So I have a big lid and I don't have to kasher the biggest one and leave that out. But this is next part. Next, let's go. Yeah.
You could even use like foil.
Yes, you can cover it with anything for Pesach.
Anything like that.
Right, it's true. If you're picking depends on your needs, of course.
No, I'm talking about even if you wanted to kasher a pot, and you're worried about that your lid isn't properly gonna allow the steam or the water to bubble all around the rim. Just cover it with foil.
No, we don't allow that. Don't allow that. You don't want to be using in the kitchen non-kosher pots, especially on Pesach. But always, you think that you can use. I need to cook some pizza, milchik, and pasta, milchik. Just take a fleischig vessel and cover it with tinfoil and then use it. No, the taste is.
Tinfoil and boil it. What's called? Put water in the pot to boil it.
Yes.
But cover the top with tinfoil, going over like mushrooming over the edges. That way, that all the steam, all the hot water will boil to the max, and we'll cover every part of it that needs to be kosher.
I know, but you don't have to. You can kosher just the boiling up. If you want to kosher a pot, you boil up hot water inside the pot. The only thing you have to worry about is the rim that doesn't get the boiling hot water.
That's what I'm talking about.
For the rim.
Yeah.
Okay, but it'll definitely cause lots of spills. The problem is that you need to raise the water level. What you're going to get if you have a cover of tinfoil over your pot is you're going to get steam.
Steam, which will also give
Steam
you
is not the same as it's not as hot as the boiling, bubbling water.
But when you cover it, plus the temperature of the pot itself raises to a temperature high enough to bubble and boil.
Okay, possibly. I think that the problem, I think practically, is that your fire is going to go out. If you've got this bubble of aluminum foil that covers your pot and everything around it, the water is going to spill over and quickly it'll put out the fire. And so it's complicated, practically. But theoretically, you're right that you could sort of create some kind of tent-like structure. Okay, moving on. What else? We covered the ovens yesterday. The microwave. We haven't discussed too much yet. It's very different than a regular oven. Very different. How does a microwave work? Yes, Ruven.
Microwave? Did it work? Is it kosher?
To kosher a microwave. Well, first I'm asking, how does a microwave work in the first place? To cook. How is there heat created?
It's a direct transfer of energy.
The waves inside cook.
Sorry?
The waves inside cook it.
What do they cook?
What cooks water?
They heat the water.
What is the water? Yeah. What water? What water?
Any form of moisture.
That's
in any
it. That's
food,
it. So you.
it causes it to vibrate.
That's right.
Drastically, causing it to
It
heat up.
bounces the hydrogen atoms back and forth on the oxygen,
right.
so you get the friction from that heating.
So it's very different than a standard oven. There's no fire. There's no. But the food gets cooked. So how does it cook? So these microwaves, as they're called, these waves get sent into the food, which is inside the oven, and inside the food there's water. Every food has some moisture content. It's water in the apple. If I put it in the microwave, what's going to heat up actually is it's cooking from the inside out. As opposed to usually we have the fire on the outside which cooks it. If I put this in the oven, the baked apple, the outside would get really, really baked and the inside would be just right.
So,
Might even burn, the outside might burn, but the inside will get cooked because you're cooking, the fire is going from the outside in. But in a microwave it's the opposite. What gets heated up is the liquid which is inside the food, and then these waves are cooking up the liquid itself.
could you argue that it's another method of boiling?
Yeah, but what's the problem? Maybe you don't have to kosher a microwave at all. How's it ever going to absorb taste? The walls of the microwave oven, because of the steam. Because of the steam.
Some things like
Sometimes spills, of course, and yeah, sure, things
Usually a fan
spill all the
that
time.
sucks the air into it.
That's right. So the entire cavity of the microwave oven and the walls have to be koshered. How do you do that?
That's my suggestion. Just put the bowl with water in it and just let it cook.
Absolutely, that's the way we do it, 100%. Because how did it receive any heat? All these walls only from steam coming from the foods or splashes from the foods. So you create the splashes, create the steam. Usually it's just steam, but you do that by putting in a cup of water for 10 minutes or even less. As long as it bubbles up, the steam covers the entire area of the microwave. You're good after you've cleaned it, of course, and waited 24 hours, of course. I don't have to say this each time. You know that you have to wait 24 hours and you have to clean it. First, as we always said, you put in a glass of water, you boil it up, you turn it on, and it's kosher. There's one more thing we have to discuss in the microwave, and that is the glass dish. Usually there's a glass dish at the bottom that rotates. There's a little mechanical piece underneath the glass plate,
That you
and
have
that
to boil.
turns and turns and turns so the food gets evenly baked or cooked, whatever it is in the microwave. And what do you do with that dish?
You boil it.
So you could put it into a boiling pot of water, like hagalah, or but sometimes maybe it's not enough, because it could be you'll put a piece of steak or a piece of food directly on the plate, the glass plate. Yeah, when you have kids in the house and they want to heat up their pizza for lunch, the frozen pizza, they don't think of, oh, I have to use a plate. We'll worry about the issue of kashrut in just a minute, because you use the microwave maybe for milk and then for meat, for heating up a leftover piece of chicken, and maybe you don't use a plate. You put it directly on that glass plate.
Well,
Can you kasher it?
yes.
Can you kasher glass? So we discussed that it's quite a controversy. Most people say you can kasher glass, although Ashkenazi custom is not to. But this microwave plate, it's a very special plate. It's designed to take this little mechanical arm, which will turn it. And you can't, it's expensive to buy another plate. You have to find exactly that type of microwave. It's very hard to find. And so what do? Sometimes you can use your microwave without it and just take it out for Pesach, but food won't get cooked properly. And so the best thing to do is to cover it. And here we're a little bit more lenient than usual. Maybe we do both. We do hagalah and we cover it in such a way that it won't. Sorry? Not a good idea. Saran wrap. You can't put aluminum inside a microwave. You'll cause a fire. Be careful. But if you do hagalah on the dish and then you cover it, that's good enough, because most people don't put their pizza directly on the glass. Most people have a dish first. Although, you're heating up some toast, you take some bread out of the freezer, just put it in the microwave. Do you always use a plate? Maybe not. And so that's why I don't allow anybody to use a microwave unless they cover that dish so well that it won't be, fall off in the middle. And since it's only used as a plate, as like a shelf, remember the discussion we had about the trays in the oven? If you're only going to use it as a tray, as a shelf, not as actually cooking in it, but you're holding up the actual cooking dish, the baking pan, whatever it is, so then there's room to do libun kal on those oven trays, and then cover those tavnit, it's called in Hebrew, and then if you're only using it as a shelf, you can get away with that. There's room to be lenient. Questions? Yes, David.
When you're inside the microwave, you're trying to clean it. There's the vents that suck things back. There's the little notches around the light that you try to clean as well as you can be. It's not like something else you can really put it in the sink.
No, use a toothbrush.
So, but is there a point that as long as you get what you can mostly see that you're okay?
Yes, especially using the technique. What did I say, the technique when we're talking about cleaning? Making it inedible. That's right. Use some cleaning liquid, which is inedible, and then whatever leftover residue is there is considered, it's nullified, correct, yes.
Use a lid in the microwave, not the straw, but a plastic lid.
Yeah.
So if I do koshering, do I need to take off the lid and do the steaming, or do I do the covering?
You should have to take off the lid and boil up that cup of water without a lid on it. Now the lid itself, now I want to talk about, while we're at the topic of microwaves, it's important, we only have a few minutes. But I think this is probably the biggest stumbling block in kosher kitchens, is the microwave. If you have a microwave. Not everybody uses them. Some people say it's not healthy, it's not... it is very convenient, and that's why we talk about it. It's not ideal for environmental reasons, for health reasons, I don't know. I'm not an expert on that. But I know that many people use it, and most people have only one microwave. It means they use it for milchik and fleishiks. It's a recipe for disaster. So I want to give you some You have 2 microwaves. Good. My friend of mine has 2. You also have 2 microwaves. Great. That's a good idea. But not everybody can afford it. The truth is microwaves are cheaper and cheaper and cheaper every year. You know, and maybe I'll do that in my house. 200 shekels or something. Huh?
No, less than that.
Yeah, but
Even
you
less,
wouldn't-
even
you
less.
wouldn't- You wouldn't say that about any of the other things. You wouldn't say you can use your toaster oven for meat.
I'll tell you why. First of all, we do. Most people use one oven for meat and then for milk. And we have to discuss that. We have to discuss that as well. Many people have only one oven.
So for a toaster oven, not for a full oven.
Toaster oven also, the same thing, but it's more complicated because there's a lot of spills. But let's continue and give you some tips about the microwave, and we're going to continue. We're going to talk another time about using one oven for both meat and milk. It's a whole other discussion. It is possible. It's quite common, as a matter of fact. But the microwave, it is quite common that people use it also. They say, just like I use my oven for meat and milk, I can use the microwave for meat and milk, and it can be done, but you have to be careful. What do you have to be careful of? Primarily spills. Things spill. People are not aware of it. You never plan to spill. It's like you get into a car. Do you put on a seatbelt? Of course you do. Not only is it because of the law, because it's smart. Do you plan to get into an accident? Of course not. But as they say in Yiddish, stuff happens. So
What do they say in Yiddish?
sorry, you understood.
You slowly notice.
Therefore, yeah, it's slowly but surely. People say. So what happens? You put in your bowl of soup to heat up with milk in it, and when you're taking it out, it spills onto the plate. The glass plate becomes milky, and then you put in your leftover meat and it spills over, and then you've got a kashrut mixing of meat and milk, and they're both hot because they've both been heated up by these microwaves magically from the inside out, as I described. And so not only that, but you've got the steam. If you've got a bowl of soup and it's very hard to estimate exactly how long that food in the microwave has to be in. Is it 30 seconds? Is it 45 seconds? In the settings nowadays we have digital, and so you have presets. So you're always underestimating or overestimating. So sometimes it's going to boil. It's going to bring to a boil. That causes steam. If it's fleischig steam that's going to go all over the microwave, all the walls are going to be absorbing fleischig's taste. And then if you have the next dish that another member of the family heats up, and he causes it to bubble and steam, so you're going to have that steam. Perhaps you're going to have drips coming from the roof of the microwave into fleischig drips coming into your milchik food, and you've got not only the glass plate with spills, but your food is going to be not kosher. You really got to be careful. So the way to do it is to cover. To cover your food. What we do in our house, and this is just a suggestion.
If you cover it, you cover it.
If you cover, you're covered. What do you have to cover though? So what most people do is you keep your microwave one taste. For example, milchik. So when I do milchik, I don't have to do anything. I just put the milchik in the oven, boil it up or whatever it's called, microwave it up, and your food's done. It boils over, it spills a little, no problem. That's natural life, especially with kids. As I said, it's that are of the age of that they're using the microwave themselves. It's going to happen, but it's no problem because everything's milchik. If you want to use that microwave for fleishiks, so then you better be careful. You have to cover it on top. There's these special microwave covers for covering your pot. So anyways, that's good because the steam, if it does steam up, it won't reach the walls and you won't have drips onto it. 8 shekels, okay. But also be careful, you have to cover it underneath. So you have to sort of create a little box for your fleischig dish. When you're putting it in the microwave, you have to cover it both on top and underneath. Only then can you use the microwave for both types of milk and meat. And on Pesach, we're very, very careful. Not only are you going to kasher your microwave before Pesach, but then on Pesach, you should only use it in this kind of cover. What I use, some people will get angry at me, some people, the purists, think that it's not right, but I use just a plastic bag. If you take a disposable plastic bag that you take from the makolet, right, these little things, and you take your dish, you put it inside the plastic bag, twist it or tie it or cover it. It's covered on the top, it's covered on the bottom, it's in a little bubble, and you can put it in the microwave and it's fine. You don't have to worry about what the steam comes to the sides, to the roof. It could melt, but plastic in microwaves usually doesn't melt. It depends how long. Obviously, if you put it in there for an hour, you're in trouble. But if you get the timing right, the food gets cooked inside, all the steam gets trapped inside the plastic bag. You're safe from above, you're safe from below, because it's in a bag. It's not touching the surface of the plastic, the glass dish. That's a great system. Just put everything of the other type in a plastic bag, and it's very convenient. Most of us have plastic bags around, but you shouldn't be using plastic bags at all because of the environment. But if you happen to have some plastic bags around, that's very convenient. Yes?
Saran wrap, can you do it with saran wrap?
Sure. It's the same as a plastic bag. It's just a little less convenient, but by all means, that's fine.
But be careful with other stuff in Israel, like you're going to use it with the oven, because the Israeli plastic wrap is not PVC, and so it melts at a lower temperature than the...
That's right. This stuff melts more than the average plastic bag. We'll have to stop here and continue the laws of Kashrut. B'ezrat Hashem, next week.